Hi, my name is Jerry Comer, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you today about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. It has to do with healthy organizations. Healthy organizations are really good things to have. They tend to generate more money, live longer, and the people within them have more fun. So the topic of the conversation here is building healthy organizations for growth and profit. And this is all in support of the ForGen Now summit that will be coming up October 12th here in the greater Denver metro area. So I will start out with a very, very brief introduction. Um, we are two folks who have fairly extensive corporate experience. My own corporate background includes assignments in engineering, marketing, sales, manufacturing, purchasing, and quality assurance, all at the manager or the vice president level. But I've been coaching and training for 25 years, and a lot of the experience that I have will inform this webinar, this conversation. And hopefully some of the examples I have will be relevant to healthy organizations and to your interests. So we do two things. We train and coach managers. We train managers, we coach leaders to higher levels of performance. We have a couple different ways we do that. First, we do a fair amount of custom one-on-one coaching. So this would be working with a manager or leader who's trying to achieve something in their work setting, whether it's an improvement in team or department performance, or it could be overcoming some aspect of literally their own behavior around communication or how they're work with their team, but it's a one-on-one coaching situation. We have a management leadership program. We call it Advance. It's an intensive 3-day workshop. We do either in-house for clients or we'll do it in public forum where we bring different people from different companies into this 3-day workshop with 6 months of follow-up. And finally, in today's world, of course, anything online or the capability of the online platforms is significant. We have through MindShop, an organization, international organization of consultants and business leaders, they have the opportunity to provide remote coaching and virtual learning involving using MindShop online. That's all training and coaching, but on the facilitation side or the consulting side, we work projects with our clients and broadly in two areas. We want to help accelerate growth in revenue. That would frequently be somewhere in marketing or sales, or we want to help improve profit, usually in the area of operations, something more effective and more efficient within the organization. Okay, enough about us. There are two broad areas we're going to talk about here. One is the context for healthy organizations, and there are 5 key components. Just a couple of words on healthy organizations. They've been in the business literature. Healthy organization as a phrase has been in business literature literally for decades. McKinsey, in fact, has an entire practice unit dedicated to healthy organizations. They've had this practice unit for more than 10 years, and of course, being McKinsey, as you might imagine, they typically work with relatively large companies. But the principles are universal. And so we can bring these principles right down to smaller organizations as well. And the research that McKinsey has basically brought forth shows that healthy organizations tend to put 3 times more on the bottom line than unhealthy organizations. So the obvious question would be, why would you not want to have a healthy organization? So item 1 is going to be a context for business, and that's healthy organization. There are 5 key components. Item 2, we'll get to in a little bit, is the ideal process for planning an organization. And if you combine these 2 concepts, chances are you're going to, as we said, have more fun in business, make more money, and live longer. So let's start out at the top. The 5 key components include it starts with the healthy CEO or leader, or leaders if you have an executive management team. And the reality is that if you don't have a healthy CEO or leader. By the way, this extends not only just extends beyond just the top level in an organization. It's true for really any team, but it's particularly true for the whole organization, that you start with a healthy CEO or leaders if you have a management team. And the reality is, if you don't have a healthy leader at the top of the organization or a healthy executive team, there's no sense in even going on to any of the other factors. But let's say you do in fact have healthy CEO leader at the top, and then it comes down to effective teams. Teams are very interesting, and there's been an awful lot of work on what makes for an effective team. But at a minimum, an effective team has got to be aligned around a common goal and must have the communication processes in place so that the team members can effectively address and solve problems. You don't have to like each other, but it is in fact better. It isn't better if you do, of course, but at a minimum, you must have those two components: alignment around a common goal and effective communication. Okay, we've got the CEO and leader, we've got the teams. Number 3 is clarity of purpose. And this really comes down to, where are you going and why? Why are we going there? That is particularly true in today's younger generations, who have expressed much greater interest in the purpose of their organization. They want to know, and of course this is a generalization, but it tends to play out across the board. They want to know, what is our purpose as an organization, and what is my purpose within this organization? They want to be doing something meaningful. So we've got the leader, we got the team, we know where we're going, we know why, we got the purpose. You've got to have a productive culture. This is the most nebulous of the 5 key components. But one way of thinking about it is, if you in fact have people who want to come to work, and you tend to retain the high performers in your organization, chances are you have a productive culture. I'm going to go into more detail on each of these 5 components here in the subsequent slides, but that's one simple way of thinking about your culture. And then finally, you've got to be growing and profitable if you want to be a healthy organization. There are 2 exceptions. One, you're in startup mode when you might be growing, but you might not be profitable. And 2, you're in an absolute turnaround situation. I've been in companies where that is the case. You're not expected to be profitable as you're turning things around, and developing a growth path for the future. So those are the 5 key components, and what I want to do is kind of dive into each of them at a little bit greater depth. So we're going to go to the healthy CEO/leader. What does this person do, whether it's a him or her? These components of what makes up a healthy CEO and leader are in fact universal. First, they've got to form the team. This is literally just putting the team together. It's been said, you've got to have the right people on the bus, they've got to be in the right seat. That's forming the team. The second step is forging the team. Teams are not natural. Remember, a team committed to a common goal and having the effective communication processes to be able to address problems and solve them. Teams are not natural. The only thing natural in an organization is self-interest and chaos. That may be a little bit cynical, but that really has been my experience over the 25 years that I've been, the 19 years corporate, 25 years I've been coaching and training individuals. So you've got to forge the team. You've got to make it happen. The leader has to establish, here's how we're going to operate, which brings us to, what's the direction? Our vision, mission, and goals. The leader establishes the direction. At the highest level, it's vision and mission, and then goals, key component of, where are we going, is the responsibility of the leader. The next step for the leader is they've got to establish the overall culture and values. And again, this is true for an overall organization, complete company, but it's also true for an operating unit within a larger company, right down to a supervisor on a shop floor who might have 4 or 5 people reporting to him or her. The leader establishes the culture and values, and people watch what the leader or the leaders do. It doesn't matter what you say, it's how you act. It's how you walk the talk. So establish team culture and values, and then demanding accountability. This is a very interesting one, and I've had very senior people in large organizations ask, how do we establish accountability? And there is a fairly straightforward process, but it all starts with good goals, which we'll talk more about later, having a process for follow-up, and then truly holding people accountable. There has to be accountability for actions. By the way, accountability is frequently thought of in terms of negative accountability. Didn't hit the goal, therefore, or didn't do something, therefore I will be punished. The reality is that accountability goes both ways. There should be accountability that results in positive rewards for positive behavior, and negative, negative rewards for negative behavior. Leaders got to do this. And ultimately, the leader is responsible for creating the systems, installing the processes so that the team can succeed. I had one CEO say, look, the biggest thing I do is run interference for my team. They're going to succeed. I'm not the one who's going to make success, which is true. In organizations, success comes about because of the activity and the work of all the people right down to the grassroots level. And then finally, communicate. I am emphasizing this because studies have shown over and over that managers and leaders typically under-communicate but think they did a good job. So communication is super important. You can be a manager, and there's a difference between leader and manager, of course. We are talking about the leader here. Most people wear both hats at some level or other. But if you cannot communicate well, you will never be an effective CEO or leader. I had one example here. I had a client. She owned a $15 million engineering company, and she was having some significant challenges with her team. And after going in, interviewing all the team members, interviewing the CEO, kicking the tires with the organization, what it turned out was that the team, in fact, was very dysfunctional. So this CEO had formed the team. There are 4 key managers, all highly skilled, very capable individuals. She had formed the team. She had not forged the team. She had allowed them to do things their own way. She had not pulled them together around a common, they had a vision, but around a common set of goals. She had not established values that were productive from the standpoint of a team, which would include respect for each other, open communication, etc. And she did not demand accountability. The result was that the company was floundering, and it was certainly an example of not being healthy. And they're paying a price for it in the marketplace. So there it is. Number 1, healthy CEO/leader. Okay, let's take a look at teams here. You've got the leader in place, very healthy. So effective teams do certain things. They share values. I had one client, and the team happened to consist of family members. The executive team was family members, and it was a seasonal business. And one of the family members, there are 4 siblings that own this business, and they're trying to drive it. One of the siblings had a value set around, remember, it's a seasonal business, had a value that he wanted to drive growth and excellence, wanted to be well known. He wanted the company to be well known in the marketplace that it served. And as a result, that's what drove him. Another sibling said, hey, this is a seasonal business. Let's make money, make hay while the sun shines, and then we've got the great opportunity to kick back and have fun in the off season. And this was a significant barrier to them being an effective team. They could not agree on how they were going to go forward with regards to that particular set of values. They've got to trust each other, got to be willing to be open with each other. Again, effective communication. You've got to be able to share your ideas, your thoughts, even things that could potentially look like conflict, which brings us to fearlessly engage in constructive conflict. That's a Lencioni term, 5 dysfunctions of a team. If you have 2 people, you automatically have conflict. If you have a team, many organizations will have an executive team, 4, 5, 6 people. If you have that many people, you inherently have conflict. Conflict simply means we have different ideas about how to do things or what to do. And those must be resolved for you to be an effective team. So you've got to have the process in place so that you can fearlessly engage in constructive conflict, get the issues out on the table, work through them, and come up with solutions that serve the highest and best interest of the organization. Accountability. Here's accountability again. It comes kind of through quite a bit in this. This is a big problem in organizations. I see it over and over and over. As I mentioned, I've had senior managers with large organizations who have actually said, how do we hold people accountable? These are people that have been managing, organizations with a couple hundred people for years. It all starts with good goal setting. I'll come back to that later. If you don't have good goals, you'll never hold people accountable. You have good goals, you have a process for follow-up, and then you actually hold people accountable, whether it's for positive reasons or negative reasons. And most organizations struggle with this. I see it as a big problem for most companies. And finally, within the team, individuals put the team interests ahead of personal or department interests. I can go back to my corporate life for an example here. At one point, I was vice president of manufacturing in a company. This, by the way, was after I'd been VP of marketing. So talk about a change of hats. But I was vice president of manufacturing, and my interests were, of course, hitting the monthly revenue goals at the budget. So I always had a budget I had to hit. The VP of sales was interested in generating the highest amount of revenue possible. And he would, upon occasion, jam some order in late in the month without necessarily working it through the system for making sure we could do all the production control work and then get the material and actually deliver the job. So his interests were show the highest amount of booked revenue in a month. My interests were getting the revenue goal that I had agreed to in the beginning of the month at the lowest budgeted cost. And jobs that were jammed in at the end of the month would cause us to invest overtime, would cause us to hire temporary workers, etc. Expediting charges. This was a manufacturing company. So our interests were in fact counter to each other in that particular instance. And by the way, we really did not trust each other. It was not an effective team. There's a very long story associated with that business, but I'll leave that for another day. So we have the leader, we have effective teams, and now number 5 component in the healthy organization foundation or context is clarity of purpose. Clarity of purpose starts with the vision, the mission, the goals, and the strategies. Those are the high-level things that wind up defining where we're going. And the key phrase here, or the key component to this, is that they are known by all. We're going to spend a little bit more time in the ideal process organizations undertake in the business world with the vision, mission, goals, and strategies. But one of the things I've seen over and over is if they are done at all, meaning vision and mission, if the goals are even set, they tend to be not something that are necessarily promulgated throughout the organization. The strategies as well, and that means the organization pays a cost in people who are not necessarily well informed. They're not going to make day-to-day decisions that will be in perfect alignment or the best alignment possible with the vision, mission, goals, and strategy. They've got to know these things should ideally be known by all, right down to the grassroots level. Okay, all teams members know where you're going. That's the vision, mission, goals, and strategies. And this is back to the why. Why does it matter? In particular, people will want to know what it is they're doing and why it matters. You can imagine the American Cancer Society. I honestly don't know what their vision is, but if it were a cancer-free world, that sounds pretty compelling. That's pretty powerful. And anybody who worked for the American Cancer Society in this hypothetical situation would know why it matters as an organization. Then the other important part is, so why does it matter? What is my purpose? Why does it matter that what I am doing will support where we're going as an organization? And then number three, the goals cascade down through all the ranks. Most organizations struggle with this. The universal goals in business are revenue and profit. And people tend to know them, although not necessarily all the way down through the ranks. The best example I have is a project I worked on last year. It was a client who had a revenue and profit goal, as all organizations do. This is a service company that provided support to construction companies. So it was roughly a $10 million company. And what they had was they wanted to increase profit. They're on a growth path, but as you know, growth takes cash, takes profit, takes investment. So they wanted to increase profit. So the goal for profit was cascaded down through the ranks to a department level in this particular case. So each department wound up, each relevant department, there was sales, there was operations, and then there was a broad administration department that included literally how things got done administratively as well as the finance department. Each department had a subset goal that directly addressed the issue of profit. So sales would have goals. Sales did in fact have goals around increasing sales calls, making their sales process more effective, more efficient to close more orders. Operations had quite a few opportunities for increasing profit by changing some of the things that they were doing. The administration / finance department had some goals about making sure they're getting paid in a timely manner, making sure they were getting hit with some late fees for paying their vendors, making sure they paid their vendors on time. So each of these departments wound up having a goal that directly contributed to, in this case, the corporate goal of profit, but it could be other goals as well. And then number four is the organization structure actually supports the business unit purpose. The structure frequently winds up being equated to the org chart. And what can happen, and it tends to be rigid. So what can happen is as your goals change, your strategies and your organization structure may need to change as well. But organizations tend to be rigid. One thing you can absolutely do would be to say, who do we have here in our organization that is manager or vice president of special projects? That's typically a great example of an organization that has made up positions, could be a made up department that really don't serve the overall purpose of the organization at this point in time, but it might have at one point in time. The best thing to do is, as your goals change, is to start out with a clean sheet of paper. Based on these goals, what's our organization look like? And then make the change. It's not easy, but that's the best way to do it. And finally, all team members understand what is expected of them. This comes back down to individual goals. The example I just used about the goals cascading down for the service company supplying these or supporting the construction industry. If the sales department was going to say, well, we're going to increase our sales goals, then each individual salesperson, they had about 4 or 5, would know what his or her specific sales goals were for the coming week, month, quarter, whatever it was, whether it's dollars revenue booked or it was a number of calls made, number of interviews, etc. But it's right down to an individual. Then you can track and then you can hold accountability. All right, we got leaders, we have teams, we now have clarity of purpose. So productive culture. There are several elements that make up a productive culture, but again, this is the most nebulous within organizations. And one of the simple ways to think about it is, are we getting the job done? Do people want to come to work here? And are we retaining our high performers, high level performers? So some of the key components, you've got values that are positive. They're understood and embraced by all. An example, way back to my early days at Texas Instruments, I was hired as a product manager in one of the business units. And one of the things that part of our orientation was a significant component on the values of Texas Instruments. Here's how we operate. And one of the ones that was very positive was, we will under no circumstances conduct any business that is either illegal, underhanded, or in any way not completely honest and above board. That stuck, that resonated with me. That was a very positive value. And it, in fact, wound up being a significant guiding factor over the course of my 7-year career with Texas Instruments. So everybody's got to understand them. You can't just have values. I've done exercises with organizations when people say, "Oh yeah, we have values. You know, I'll say, what are your corporate values?" "Yeah, we've got them." "Well, what are they?" And if somebody says, "Well, let me pull out my notebook and read them to you," then the reality is the organization doesn't have values. They should be top of mind. That's the understood and embraced by all. Second factor, all team members are engaged. The engagement, Gallup studies this in the US. The engagement in the US by workers in the US generally hovers between 30 and 35%. So what does engagement mean? It means that when I go to work at a company, I am happy to be there. I want to contribute at my highest potential level. The organization has engaged me. So between 30 and 35%, you might ask, well, what about the other 65 to 70%? 60% are there, they're kind of putting in their time, they're working, they're contributing, but it's not at the level of engagement. You're not getting their full potential. You might think of somebody that kind of punches a clock. Yeah, I'm here at 8, I leave at 5, or whatever the hours are. They're not fully engaged. They're contributing, but they're not fully engaged. That's 60%. 10% are actively disengaged. They're either literally spending wasteful time looking for some other employment outside your company, your organization, or they are in fact actively engaged in doing something harmful to the company. And obviously that is not a productive culture. Remember, I said you should reward the performers and figure out either coach up or get rid of the non-performers in a prior slide. So engaged members, part of the productive culture. Oh, here we are. Performers are rewarded. I guess I jumped ahead. Non-performers are coached or replaced. Too many organizations get complacent about performance. And if you have a highly engaged team, you will tend to have people that self-select themselves out of an organization. If the values are positive, the team members are engaged, it creates an environment where if I'm not a performer, I don't even need to be approached by my boss. I just, I don't think this is the right place for me, and I leave. So performers are rewarded, non-performers are coached or replaced. All staff members are developed to higher levels of performance. This is a very conscious decision on the part of the organization that says, look, we're all good. We've hired good people. We've done the best we can to hire good people, but all people have potential to work at an even higher level of performance. It could be training around a technical skill. It could be training around some aspect of management if they're in a management or leadership position. And companies that invest in their people tend to get much higher performance. And then communication is effective in two ways, two directions, both up and down the organization. Remember, I said before, managers, effective managers, and leaders will communicate. The reality is that communication in organizations or companies tends to be one way. It's from the top down. Really productive cultures have a good system for allowing communication to filter up. One simple way of thinking about this is if you're the boss or the leader and you say to Fred or Mary, hey, Fred or Mary, I need you to get this done. The flip side of that always should be, what do you need from me? Or what do you need from the team? Or what do you need? That facilitates conversation back up the chain, so to speak. So productive organization or organization productive cultures make sure that there is good communication both ways, down and up. And finally, back to accountability. A productive organization, productive culture includes accountability. If you don't have accountability, things just are happening. And that doesn't mean you're going out of business, but it does mean you're not operating at the level that you could be operating. And finally, you've got to be growing and profitable. Key element of this is you plan for growth. I had a client that was a $30 million business, distribution business, never did any planning, just didn't do it. And, I was helping them with some of the marketing and sales aspect of the business, didn't do planning around those things. They've been in business for decades, literally decades, and they made money every year, but they just didn't do any planning. You're either a planned organization or you are a tactical day-to-day operation, and that's totally up to you. You got to make a decision, but if you want to be a healthy organization, you've got to plan for your growth. You've got a clear value proposition and the value chain that will support it. What is your value proposition? The value proposition is the unique thing that you can bring to the market. It's unique, it makes you unique, and you can defend it, and people will pay you a premium for it. If you can't present a unique value proposition, then you're just a commodity, and you're going to get commodity treatment in the marketplace. It doesn't mean you go out of business, but it does mean that you may, in fact, not be as healthy as you could be. You're not going to be in that top tier of healthy organizations, putting 3 times more in the bottom line. And then the value chain, it's one thing to say, this is our value proposition. It's another thing. The other thing you've got to do is make sure you've invested in your internal operations so that you can, in fact, deliver on that value proposition. For example, Walmart, their value proposition, they used to have a tagline of always the lowest cost, always. And they are, in fact, very low cost. But if they had not put in place the entire chain of whatever it is they needed to do to acquire material at the lowest cost possible, to deliver it as efficiently as possible, then they couldn't support their value proposition. And in fact, they would run the risk of going out of business. There are other value propositions. Four Seasons, for example, in the resort world, super high service, very customer intimate kind of a thing. Apple, known for innovation. They have put the value chain in place. They invest vast sums of money on research and development. So you've got to decide what your value proposition is. You've got to have the value chain in place to support it. What is your sustainable competitive advantage? In the example of Walmart or Costco, they in fact have invested in their entire supply chain to make sure that they've actually got the lowest cost capability, which enables them to bring to the market product at the lowest cost. So what is your sustainable competitive advantage? What can you rely on going forward through your marketplace that makes you unique and you can actually defend your business? You consciously work on getting rid of unprofitable things that are in your business. I had a client, it was that distribution company that was profitable. They've been around for a long time. This is the one that did not plan. And I once pointed out to them that they could, through some fairly simple things in their sales department, drive their profit probably to double what it was. They still wouldn't be top tier profitable, but they were doing things like having no minimal orders. They would take orders for very small products that put the entire order through the system. The National Association of Purchasing Managers calculated quite a while ago, and I'm sure it's updated today with things being automated through the internet and whatnot, but calculated that to process a purchase order cost $50. That was quite a while ago, and Amazon doesn't cost Amazon $50 to process an order when you place it online. But in this case, this organization had people that would answer the phone, place an order, put the order into the system, meaning the computer. All of that was there was a high cost to it, and yet they would do that for an item that costs as little as $5. So you consciously work to eliminate unprofitable elements that are within your business, and you work consistently on continuous improvement. I've tagged this capital C, capital I, and there are different systems out there. There's the 4 disciplines of execution, which basically addresses continuous improvement. There is, when I worked at Texas Instruments, every year, did not matter what department you were in, every year we had a continuous improvement goal that as a manager, I had to sign up for and support. And the idea was always to improve some aspect of our performance, which may or may not have been directly supportive of profit, but in fact was certainly would advance continuous improvement. That's the context of a healthy organization. 5 key components. I want to talk now briefly about the ideal process in organizations. I have used this flow chart for 25 years. It is the ideal way things work. You have a compelling vision that causes people to leap out of bed in the morning. You have an explicit mission that's a statement of purpose. Here's what we do when we're at work. You have concrete, measurable goals. Your strategy support your goals. That's your value proposition, your value chain. You organize your assets, meaning you allocate your assets to support the strategy. Your tactical plan then supports your goals and strategy. You implement, you go out in the marketplace, you do it, you keep an eye on things, monitor, and you take action if you need to get back on track if for whatever reason you're not achieving the results you wanted. And the higher up you go, the less likely you are to be changing things. But if you're not getting the results you thought you were going to get, you've got to change something. That's the monitor and act, all in the context of shared values and true team. So let's talk about these components. Vision. This is a point of reference for the organization. I've used a couple of space things here. One of the most powerful ones I've heard over the years as an example was John Kennedy in 1963 when he said, by the end of the decade, we will send a man to the moon and bring him back safely. It was an extremely powerful vision. By the way, it also fit the bill of a goal, which we'll get to here in a moment. But the vision gives you a point of reference. We are going to put a man on the moon. It is a beacon to go towards. It is going to pull people in the direction, it's going to give the direction that we need to go towards in terms of achieving this vision. It will push or it will pull the organization towards some future achievement. In this case, the vision, the man on the moon, that was 8 years out, 8 years out. And it was a big thing. And there are typically 3 components. Aspiration, this is going to be unique. We have to aspire to figure out how we're going to get there. It's a unique long-term achievement, which certainly getting to the moon was. It is inspirational, providing a compelling magnet that captures the imagination of the entire organization. In fact, back in those days, all of the space launches were televised. And as you know or might know, the space launches would typically run into holds where the TV crew needed to do something to fill the time, the dead air. And so they would interview people. And one of the examples of inspiration here was at one point this television crew was interviewing someone who was doing some maintenance within one of the larger buildings that they had in Cape Canaveral at the time. Said, so, what are you doing here? Expecting to get an answer about the maintenance, whatnot. And the gentleman said, we're putting a man on the moon. That's how inspiring that vision was. And finally, it's got to involve perspiration. My experience is that maybe 10 in 100 companies actually have worked through the process of trying to put a vision together, but only 1 in 100 have done it well. When I ask someone, oh, using this little flow chart, so what's your vision? And if they tell me, well, kind of like values, I'm not, it's on a plaque up in the lobby. Let's go look at it. That doesn't count. That is not a vision. That is simply not valid. Okay, the vision, then the mission supports the vision. This is the statement of purpose. What is it we're actually doing here is typically a longer statement that gives one, enables people to get guidance on decision making, whether it's current decision making or critical issue decision making or strategic decision making. If I know the mission of the organization, then I am more likely to be able to make a decision that's in alignment. And that's what the mission does for an organization. It provides a guide in terms of operational aspects, but also ethical and financial aspects for companies and organizations. It identifies the scope of operations, typically in product and market terms. Here we have the shuttle blasting off from Cape Canaveral. You know, the scope of the operations, I mean, one way of looking at this is the vision became the mission, which was NASA, put the man on the moon. And it reflects the values and priorities of an organization. A vision statement is typically very short and sweet. By the end of the decade, we'll put a man on the moon and bring him back safely. A mission statement is typically a little bit longer, but generally no longer than a paragraph. Vision, mission, goals. Set good goals. This is a place that, this is an element that almost all organizations I'm familiar with struggle. There are criteria for setting good goals. There is the SMART system. We use the SMART system. There's a couple of other factors we put on, but at the end of the day, you've got to set a goal that is measurable and that the company or the organization can work toward and individuals can work toward. I want to pause here for a moment. One of the big issues with goal setting, one of the reasons it's a problem within organizations and it affects accountability, is the concept of goal versus target. A goal is something you commit to, you move heaven and earth, you're still not going to hit all your goals. The target is something that'd be nice to do. Yeah, it's out there, maybe I'll get to it, maybe I won't. An example was when I was vice president of manufacturing, we were doing explosive welding of dissimilar metals. We were using, and our product material was very large plates of metal. My goal was the monthly revenue target at the budget. I would move heaven and earth to hit that goal. Toward the end of the month, I would hire temporaries, I'd authorize overtime, I'd go to 3 shifts, I'd authorize expediting charges, which, by the way, would typically hit the budget, but I would do all that. I would still not hit the goal 100% because nobody bats 1,000. The target was my boss wanted me to clean up the yard. We had acres and acres of large pieces of metal out in the yard. And I said, yeah, Bill, I'll get to it someday. It was on my list, but it was a target. It was not a goal. It's very important to know which are your goals and which are your targets. Vision, mission, goals, strategy. Okay, strategy, we've talked about a bit. It defines your value proposition, what makes you unique. It determines what you need to do to put your value chain in place or elements to improve in your existing value chain. And it establishes your market discipline. Are you the lowest total cost? These are 3 common market disciplines. Walmart, Costco, total lowest cost. Customer intimacy. I know you super well. I'm going to take care of you. 4 Seasons Resort. You know, you're greeted by name when you walk in. Whatever your favorite beverage is in the refrigerator. Or product or service leader. You lead the marketplace. That's where Apple frequently winds up coming in. But you've got to decide what it is, and everybody needs to be in agreement. I did a project with an engineering company, and there are about 12 members of the management team where we went through a survey of what their value proposition was. Because you've got to know the value proposition before you can decide on the value chain and decide on your market discipline. The 12 members of the management team started out not agreeing on what their value proposition was. What is it that they were uniquely positioned to do and that their customers would pay them a premium for? It took us a day or so to get them to come to agreement. Okay, vision, mission, goal, strategy. Now you organize, you allocate your assets. This is how are we going to allocate our people? Where are we going to have them working? What aspect of our business are we going to be working on? Where will we allocate our capital? People and budgets are two of the biggest things that people frequently need, compete for within organizations. And if you don't do that well, then you're not necessarily going to get the results you want in the organization. And finally, depending on what your business is, you may actually be talking about capital equipment. And you may not be a big company dealing with cranes and whatnot, but you may be a company. I talked to a software developer yesterday. He's got to figure out, what kind of equipment we need to develop, computer equipment, servers and whatnot. What kind of equipment do we need to develop and deploy our product, or in this case, our services? Okay, vision, mission, goals, strategy. We've organized as best we can, given the goals. All right. We need to come up with the tactical plan. So the tactical plan supports the goals and it supports the strategy. These are the specific action plans that will support your goal achievement. What will we do? Who will be responsible for getting it done? When will things get done? Great example for this is a marketing plan. I've done marketing plans with clients over the years. You've got to get very crystal clear about, what are we going to do? We're going to go to trade shows. Are we going to do advertising, whether it's print, not so much anymore, broadcast, Google AdWords? You've got to decide what we're going to do, who will be responsible. If we're going to go to that trade show, what are all the milestones that we need to have in place so that we actually get there and do the job that we need to do? And then finally, what's the budget for any one of our tactics? I just use market plan as an example, but in fact, it's really all departments need to be coming up with action plans that support the goals and the strategy. And then let's get out there and do it. Just do it. I would have used the Nike swoosh, but I was afraid I'd be infringing on intellectual property, so I didn't. But it comes down to action. And I want to come back and revisit this for a moment. This is the flow chart. Vision, mission, goals, strategy, etc. My experience is that almost all companies are down at the implement level. That's 1 up, 2 up from the bottom. They are just busy day to day. I have had so many conversations with CEOs over the years who have literally taken this. I've got a flow chart, and they'll just draw a circle around implement, and then they'll draw a line through vision, mission, goals, strategy, etc. And say, we just don't do that. They're not proud of it. They're not saying this is the way we think it should be. They're just saying we don't get to it. And some of these companies have been around for a long time. Some of these companies have actually, they're profitable and whatnot. But this is the ideal way. And if you are stuck all day long implementing, then you are not necessarily going to be a healthy organization operating at the highest levels of performance. So after you've implemented, you've got to keep an eye on things. You've got to monitor what's going on. And this should be a structured process. You've got to keep track of progress. Sales, profit, could be many other things you need to keep track of. And you also need to be evaluating new realities on a continual basis. New realities, which could be either opportunities or threats, can cause you to change your goals and change your strategies. One of my clients, who was a different company, wanted to possibly enter into a new market. That was an opportunity, but they didn't know anything about it. So we spent several months evaluating that opportunity, market research, doing background information, interviewing players within that particular market. At the end of that process, they had a clearer picture of what they wanted to do about the opportunity, and they decided, yeah, we want to go into this market. And then once they decided that, then they could put the plans in place. And by the way, they had to make some changes to their organization structure to pursue that marketplace. So you monitor things, if it's strategic, at a minimum, quarterly, certainly annual. Companies that do sort of the annual strategic planning process, that's not bad. Some don't do it at all, but annual is not bad, but quarterly really is indicated, should be part of the process today. Things are changing too rapidly. in markets. And then if it's tactical, it's monthly, weekly, daily. I had a client in California once that was literally monitored performance of, this is a call center, they monitored performance of their call center people literally on an hourly basis. How often do you need to be monitoring progress against goals? So, quick summary, healthy organizations, 5 key components. This is the context for what makes things work really well. Starts with the leader. After the leader, if the larger organization, it's the key executive team or the management team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, whatever that is. If they're not healthy, it's not worth talking about the rest of the organization. Then you've got to have effective teams. At a bare minimum, they've got to be committed to a common goal. They've got to have communication processes in place so that they can address and solve problems. It's better if they have respect. It's better if they like each other, but at a minimum, they need to have those 2 things. Clarity of purpose, vision, mission, goals, and strategy are the embodiment of clarity of purpose. Productive culture, do people want to come to work for you? Are you, in fact, retaining the high performers within your organization? Are the poorer performers selecting themselves out? You've probably got a productive culture. And then you've got to be growing and profitable if you want to be a healthy organization in the way that McKinsey defines it. And then the ideal process, in summary, this is it. I've used this for 25 years. It works. It is the process, and in fact, the flow chart aspect of it is relevant as well. Where are you in the process? You could actually use this as a little bit of a sort of a self-assessment. Scale of 1 to 5, what's our vision? What's our mission? How are we doing about setting goals? How about strategy, et cetera? Give yourself a rating. Do we have shared values? Do we have a true team? And if for whatever reason you got a gap, you say, nope, if we're not a 4 or 5 on the scale of 1 to 5, then maybe you ought to do something about it. Okay. Do you have a healthy organization? I invite you to take the quiz. It's on my website. It's free. It's fast. Results come directly to your inbox. You don't need to ever hear from me. I mean, I will get a copy, but I won't bother you. And so there you have it, ComerAssociates.com. Go to quizzes. There's healthy organization. There's also healthy leaders. There's a couple of others. And finally, any questions?
Of course, Jerry. Of course there are questions. How are you? Jerry,
Super.
You know, I loved it, having worked many, many years ago, not in any tech or manufacturing capacity, but I worked for a little Fortune 500 company called Georgia Pacific years ago. So much of what you're sharing resonates with me. However, regarding engagement and regarding the big picture, which is why we're so happy to have Comer and Associates as our key, as a sponsor for our upcoming summit. But you mentioned engagement, since the whole essence of 4Gen Now is connecting and matching and collaborating intergenerationally. I was struck, but you were right on when you said that there's only about 30 to 35% engagement in the workplace. My question to you, with your vast experience, not just in corporate America, in a variety of industries, but now coaching, what suggestions, if you were to wave your magic wand, how can we have more intergenerational engagement in either the workplace broadly or specifically startups? That's my only question for you.
Okay, it's going to start with the leader and the team. All of this, the clarity of purpose, et cetera, is very important, especially the intergenerational organization. But the leader and the team, if there's a management team who's big enough to have, sort of an organizational structure, has to be constantly in touch with everybody in the organization, such that people are heard. Well, two-way. It's two-way communication. It's back to everybody should know the vision, the mission, the goals, the strategy, the values. Everybody should know and embrace them. And if management and the management team are not doing a good enough job sharing those, then people will tend to become less engaged.
Okay.
I want to know what is the purpose here and what is my purpose here? And then the only other thing is besides sharing all that, that same management team needs to be listening. That's
Very difficult for people to do, especially, well, across generational, but listening, what a concept, what a skill set.
right.
Jerry, one more time, how can our members who are watching this, who listening to you, who couldn't make it live, how can they get in touch with you?
The perfect question. So here's the final, my final slide, just some contact information, and I would be happy to chat about any of this. I've been studying this and working in these kinds of things for years, and I just love to help companies get better at what they do.
Jerry, I sense that. I can feel it. I know firsthand, having met you last year. Thank you not just for your support of ForGen Now. Thank you for your support not just of existing companies, but a special thank you for having the patience and the support to continue to work and help build healthy organizations for growth and profit among startups and especially intergenerational startups. Thank you very much for your support, Jerry.
Well, my pleasure. And thank you, Jim, for providing the opportunity to do this. And I will see you on October 12th, just a few weeks out.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, Jerry.
Okay. Bye-bye.